Ponytails podcast. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Andres Gambo here, and I am the host of the Ponytails podcast. Thank you for being with me. If this is your first episode, welcome. Let me tell you a little bit about what we do and who we are. If this isn't your first episode, well, listen in. It's a lot of fun. But basically, we are a podcast that interviews alumni of one of the, if not the oldest internship in the United States with Southwestern Advantage. Now, we're not affiliated with the company itself, Southwestern Advantage. We just are all people who did the internship and decided to have some fun conversations and share some stories with the over 100,000 alumni that have in the history of the country and then in the company have done this program. Just so you know a little bit about the program, basically college kids go to a different part of the country to sell books to help families with homework. Now they do this for 80 hours a week, Monday through Saturday, on straight commission and no guarantees. So you can imagine some stories come out of there. Now, some people that we've had on the air sold for one summer and they did okay. And then some people that we've had on the air sold multiple summers, went on and had a career with the company itself after the internship and sold a ton of books and had a lot of success. We don't really judge either way. We're just here for the stories and for the experience and for a good conversation, which we have not missed once. So I'm super excited to bring this to you guys. A couple of shout outs. We are fully monetized, which means that we are being funded and we are being supported by different companies. The best part about that is that all of these companies are either owned or worked at by alumni of the program. We kept it all in-house. And so because of that, we love to give recognition to some alumni that are doing some awesome things out there. So the first shout out I want to give out to is Will Metscher, who is one of my dear friends. I sold with him for multiple summers, and Will is currently working with Southwestern Consulting. Now, if you guys remember your time, if you sold books or if you didn't, let me tell you a little bit about how special it is we got to teach kids principles for their lives that they weren't going to get to learn. Some people don't even get to learn until their 30s or 40s or 50s. And so obviously that's something that Will really took to heart and he loved doing. So he continued doing so with Southwestern Consulting. And he's making a lasting impact for the people that he coaches. He's one of the best coaches that they have. And he is looking for people to work with him. So if you are looking for maybe a career change, that'd be a good place to go start. Every one of the coaches that he worked with has earned over 6 figures and has built a pretty amazing career that creates a lasting impact. So reach out to us and we can put you in touch with Will so you can learn a little bit more about that opportunity. Second shout out goes to Seth Hood and Zane Gallagher. These guys both are more recent bookmen, and they noticed that there's a lot of people out there who are struggling with fitness and their health. We started working with them to get ready for our Bisler trip. I'll get you guys the details about that. But for us personally, for me individually, the experience that I've had has been phenomenal. So if you guys are looking to go into a very awesome and welcoming community of people who can help you stay accountable and reach your goals physically and mentally and emotionally, this is a good spot to start out with. For me, I wasn't really sure what I was doing in the kitchen. I was just kind of eating and cooking, but not really paying attention to anything as far as my health and my fitness. And at the gym, I was kind of just using the same old workout since high school, which was over 10 years ago. And with these guys, I've been able to stay accountable and I joined this community, and it's been a lot of fun and really encouraging to be able to prepare for our Bisler trip, which is coming right up. So if you guys are looking to kind of get back into shape, have a solid accountability partner to keep you kind of going and motivated and having fun while doing this, you guys reach out to Elevate Wellness. They are a phenomenal company and they are just blowing up currently. So they have several coaches that can help you out and meet the needs that you have and the goals that you have for yourself. Now on the Bisler trip, we are going to Mexico. Now, Bisler is we took the Sizzler idea and we created our own thing, which is going to be an alumni reunion in Mexico. Now, a lot of people had different ways of doing this, but we were the first ones to kind of really put something together. So August 15th through the 19th of this year, we're going to be in the Cancun area at the Valentin Imperial and Maya. And man, it's like a really nice resort. It's not one of those resorts which were kind of like the low end. We're talking about a much nicer experience. And you guys can get signed up for that. There's a link below in the description you can click on to get more details. And then there's another link below where you can just go straight to sign up. If you already know a lot of the details about it, make sure you hit it there. We will see you in Mexico. Last but not least, a big shout out to our friends over at Cardinal, Cardinal Senior Benefits. We've been working with these guys for about 2 months now, and they are growing. They've already had 3 or 4 people that heard about them through us and have been added to their team. And a lot of people have really gravitated that way because of the freedom and flexibility. Now, everybody preaches freedom and flexibility, but one of the things that they get to also boast is that it's not about the availability of the clients. And so because of the demographic these are, they're like more older people. You can actually turn your leads on and off as you wish and mold your schedule around whatever works, even if you have a different lifestyle. So to give you an idea, Jessica Chappell and Bridget Nicholson are moms who are able to provide their family with a 6-figure income working 15 to 25 hours a week. Pedro Vega and Quintin Roberts are more in the leadership role, and so they're able to make multiple 6-figure incomes working 30 to 45 hours a week, more on the leadership side of things. Then you have Sean Brifo and Greta Huerta, who are single and just kind of still finding their way through life, but they're able to make things work for them month to month, week to week. These guys are taking full advantage of the freedom that they have and are able to take care of business and make multiple 6-figure incomes working about 25, 30, 35 hours a week. Now, if you guys are there listening and have thought about leaving your job or looked for other things, or maybe aren't happy with the money you're making, or you're just unhappy with the freedom that you have at your current job, give these guys a call, or don't. They don't really care. They're just going to crush you with or without you. There's your buying atmosphere. Of course, they would rather do it with you. So that is all. Now, big introduction here. Now it's time for a guest, and I'm excited. This is a big one because Roger Smith is in the house. I'm so excited. Guys, the reason I'm excited is because I spent so many hours of my 80 hours a week listening to Roger Smith tell me about how to sell more books. A lot of the success that I found, and I'm sure a lot of the success that book people found, had to do with the coaching that was timeless that he provided when he was still selling, when he was like becoming on his way to becoming a DSM. And I mean, heck, there's still people today that are probably listening to him on the book field. His psychology on how to break down the sale, how to do a good demonstration. Wow, phenomenal. So it's an honor to have him here today. A little bit about Roger. He was 16 years in the book business. He sold a total of 6 summers though, but he continued on and became a DSL. He sold from 92 to 97 and was part of the Real Deal organization that then scattered after he left. He was from the University of Dayton, originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, very proud Steelers fan. And one of the coolest things, one of his biggest accomplishments that he was shared with us is that he had 6 10-person teams throughout his career, which is not an easy thing to do. If you've ever tried to recruit anybody for anything, getting one person to do anything would be amazing. But 10 people is incredible, and doing it 6 times is just insane. And of course, he would tell you he was a good salesperson, but he was a better leader. And then as he progressed in his career, he just became better and better at the job. And so hopefully we're going to get some good nuggets of wisdom here, as well as some really awesome stories and just some really cool conversations. Hope you guys enjoy it. Now, Roger, I'm going to bring you on the screen. Hello, sir.
Hey, Andres, how you doing?
I'm taking over the world.
There you go.
Somebody's got to.
I still use some of the Southwesternisms that throw it when you're in the corporate world. People, how you doing? If I was any better, I'd be twins and stuff like that. And it always kind of gives people go, really? What did he just say?
So, I'm happy, healthy, terrific. Wow.
There you go.
That's amazing. Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for being here. I'm happy to have you on here. I'm honored that you're here. I'm so excited to talk to you.
It's such a neat thing that you're doing. I really appreciate you doing it. It's listened to a few of these and it's brought back some memories, if you will, and good to relive the past for an old fart like me. So
now here's the thing. We've had you call yourself an old fart, but I don't know, man. We had people who sold in the 60s on the show before, so you're still youngin'. You're still doing great. Not that Jim Potts is any. I'm not calling Jim Potts an old fart. I'm just saying, there's people who have some years on you. And so it's cool to have you. What episodes did you listen to that you kind of liked?
Gosh, I liked them all, but I think there's a natural tendency to listen to people that you knew and their peers, and so whether it be Dave Rose and Todd McWhirter, Amy Brock-Devine, Kate Raitt, Lester Crafton, Grant
Yeah.
Greeter, Matt Atchison. Listen to some of those ones. So yeah,
Yeah. Those that
Pat and I were sales managers together for a long time. So listen to Pat Roach. So yeah.
that's not a bad names list. If you're doing something cool with book people and you drop that names list, that's not a bad that's not a bad list to start with. So I'm glad you enjoyed them. It's been a blast. Let's dive right in. I mean, we always like to catch up with you and what you're up to now, and kind of hear about, what's life been like since you left Southwestern. So
Sure.
we can start from right as soon as you left Southwestern, or what you're up to now. But usually a good chronological projection to what brought you here to 2022 is a good place to start. So do you mind if we go back to the minute
Of
you left
course.
Southwestern?
Yeah. So my last summer was I think 2007, if I remember correctly. And then, at the time, as much as I'd love to say, boy, I really did a broad canvas of every opportunity that was out there to pick the right thing for me. The reality is at the time, I more or less let the sister companies recruit me, and, kind of picked one of them. I ended up going to work with what is now called Thinking Ahead, was called Southwestern Business Resources at the time. And I really enjoyed the role. I was a headhunter and a recruiter, in other words. I was not working with the book kids, although some names that some people might know on this podcast, Hans Schlegel and Shane Merrick. I recruited both
Yeah.
of those guys, and so I'm quite familiar with that part of the business. I was working with commercial bankers, and I mentioned that because if you have any kind of historical context of what happened and what caused the economic crisis of 2008 and 2009, it's almost comical at this point in time, going, if you could, recruiting is very much affected by the economy. It's reality. um, if you could have picked a worse career move, it'd be hard to think of, to be honest with you. uh, and I did relatively well compared to my peers, but it was a step back in income to what I was. I was a regional sales director when I left, and it was a step back. And after about a year, I was going, oh boy, I got to figure out something else to do. And then I really did do a bit of a broad search. Um, I had what I would tell you is that it kind of narrowed down my career search to, and there were some kind of mitigating factors, meaning I did have a family and kids at the time. It was important for me to not build to a six-figure amount, but to make it year one. At that point, I, in essence, said, took a shot at something that was less guaranteed with being a recruiter, to be honest with you. So I kind of
Mm,
ruled out, some of the, I'll call them clientele building businesses, the insurances, the financial plannings of the world. I think I did sit down with Jeff Dobines, who Jeff was uh, Jeff's rookie year. He lived with me on the book field, so I know Jeff quite well, and it's amazing to see what he's accomplished. But I, really kind of narrowed it down to two industries: medical device sales and software sales. I ended up
mm.
joining with Thomson Reuters. I've been Thomson Reuters is a large publicly traded, I think at the time when I joined them, it was like 60,000 employees and $16 billion of annual revenue. We've
Yeah.
divested part of the business since then, so we're about half on both of those numbers now. Still, but a big company, if you follow me. And the
Yeah.
group that I work with specifically is I'm in our business segment for global accounting firms. And so I manage the overall relationship between Thomson Reuters and three of what's commonly referred to as the big four accounting firms. And they are really some of our largest customers. To give you just a sense of context, those three customers spend about $75 million annually with us. And so I'm tasked with retention, sales, client management. They are also our biggest sell with partners, where like we go to market with them and sell to corporate clients. The corporate client licenses our product, the firm implements it, and then we're also huge customers of the firm. And I kind of work with a team of people that help with that. I'm steered with those three accounts in particular. I actually work with a few Southwestern
Wow.
alumni, Tiffany Newman, who's now Tiffany Ekper from the former Force organization, and Shane Merrick works with me now with Thomson Reuters. So that's what I'm up to now. I've been doing it. I've been at Thomson Reuters for about 13 years in various roles, and really enjoy what I do. So
Wow. That is a major, that's a, I mean, that's a major successful company. That's amazing. It's so
well,
cool to hear
it's
about.
just a big company. There's what I would say is you learn as you get, and I'm 51 for perspective. You do get, as you get older and you gain perspective. I think, and, there's pros and cons and being small and privately held and large and publicly held. Pros and cons on both sides is what I would tell you. One's not, it's finding what's best for you. That's just my story and the route I've gone. So
Phenomenal. Well, I had a couple questions, and then I want to talk about your current career. But when you were with SBR, and actually we were talking with Andrew Neisler. I don't know if you remember
yeah,
that name or if
I
you knew
remember
that
Andrew
name yet.
quite well from back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, he went on to SBR as well right after he's like, I was terrible at it. And then he went into real estate. So now he's doing real estate. But that was the other career that in 07 was probably the worst thing you could have gotten into besides what you were doing. Like
maybe commercial real estate would have been up there at the time. So yeah.
Brutal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I always like to ask this when things got hard, because you left Southwestern and then I mean, and you were, such the regional sales director, like you're doing, that's a big job. That's a real job that you're managing a big group and organization. You move on to the next career, and then things kind of go dark. What confidence, or where did you draw your confidence from to kind of make it out a kind of a difficult jam, if you will, that you were moved on, and how did you, what parts of your experience with Southwestern did you pull from to kind of get yourself through?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andre. So, what I would tell you is and I think for the alumni out here that have kind of been around a few blocks, if you will, we've seen people that were successful in Southwestern that had a hard time sticking the landing after Southwestern, and
Yeah.
then we've seen people that have really gone on to great successes, etc. But what I would say is I tried to remember at the time and still try to remember every day today some of the basic success principles you get exposed to your first summer, including that what's the one about you don't own success, you rent it, and the rent's due every day, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And my point being is that I think that there's nobody cares, frankly, what you did at Southwestern once you're gone. And just because you worked 80, 100 hours, whatever the heck you did then, that doesn't buy you anything but potentially an interview in the next phase. And you have to be willing to be the proverbial rookie again,
Mm.
and invest in yourself and your career to to achieve the levels of success. At least that's my experience. I had relative success at the time of SBR, considering the economy, if you will. And frankly,
Right.
had I joined in a different economy, I might still be there. I liked being a headhunter. Um, but when I left that and went to I had a kind of a decision to make. I'd been a sales manager for a long period of time. It basically was the a fundamental question I had to deal with is, did I want to, there was opportunities to go be a sales manager, or did I want to pick up a sample case and then eventually try to go into back to a sales manager route, if you will. And I
Right.
just fundamentally kind of always went back to, you can't do what you can't, you can't do what you've not done, and you can't teach it, all that kind of stuff that we were exposed to and being a student manager, and thought that ultimately the best place in my career is to, as Craig Soder used to say, don't let your ego get in the way of your pocketbook, and go pick up a sample case and proverbially sell. And ironically, I actually made more money there than I ever did as a regional sales director, even year one, doing that. But then got myself into position to being, able to go from a manager, director, et cetera, at Southwestern. But I guess long way of saying is that um, you get, you've heard the book Everything You Needed to Know You Learned in Kindergarten.
Yeah.
Um, well, I truly believe that everything you need to be successful, at least in a career in sales or sales management, which is where I've spent my career, you do get exposed to within your first couple summers at Southwestern. The question is, do you apply them? So,
Wow. That's so cool
yeah.
to hear that from you is huge, because people, I feel like sometimes people want to paint the picture, and maybe it's negative self-talk or whatever, but you think of people who are so successful, you go, oh, I could never do that. It's like, no, if you sold 2 summers, especially if you were decently or relatively successful in Southwestern for 1 or 2 summers, you actually got what it takes as well to just go on. And to hear
Mhm.
that from you, people think there's this secret sauce or this like, you know, like secret between people who are successful that they aren't sharing. No, it's literally just the things that you can learn during this entire internship, even if you're not and you don't go on to go to sales, if you go into medicine or if you go into something else.
Yep.
And so it's amazing to hear that from you. So that's pretty cool. That's
And
pretty
Andres,
cool.
I would tell you, I think that the natural thing that people realize is the sales skills you gain, and you learn everything to be successful in any sales oriented career or other things like that. But I would actually say that Southwestern might have been better at management training than even sales training. um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I can tell you that whether I'm taking over a new team, which I've done a couple times in a career, or hiring somebody new, one of the first meetings I have with them, and tell me if this sounds familiar, is we'll take a 3x5 note card out. I'll say, let's write down on one side things that you can expect from me, and other side things I can expect from you. And I do the student manager creed with them. I'm not kidding you. They don't know that that's what it is, but I'll never ask you to do anything I'm not willing to do or haven't already done, and always be honest with you, and all those things, and those exact things, and we initial it, and I carry it in my wallet with me, and it truly, I used to say when we were recruiting that what was it, God, I forget the name of the close that was the mother of all closes, that if you knew you'd be successful, would you really do it? But I forget that what the actual
Yeah.
name of that close was at the time. But
I
the point being is that I still truly believe the mother of all management principles is, if you live the student manager creed in whatever manager job you have, you're probably going to be a pretty good manager.
that is brilliant. And for people listening who maybe don't remember or didn't get that far in the recruiting, maybe they just sold 1 or 2 summers and then they didn't really get to do this. We're talking about the time where you sit down with the first year student that's about to go sell books and you go, hey, here's what I'm gonna expect out of you. Here's what you can expect out of me. And you go down this like checklist of like, it has nothing to do with like sales. It has just to do with expectations and realistic uh, um, points of where you can cure the conflict that might come up in the summer. And so when something arises in the summer, you kind of look back to those principles or those promises, I guess, if you will, and say, hey, we talked about this. If this was to happen, here's how we were going to handle it. And it's really brilliant to be able to kind of let the person get their guard down so you can coach them, and then to get them open to being coachable, right? So it's like a very cool uh creed, I guess, that we go for. And it's amazing that you're still using that you still use it. That's so awesome.
And I could tell you, I've had conversations with 50-year-old grown adults that are, making well into the 6 figures, where we have to have the conversation of, listen, here's your goals and here's your actions. You either got to change your goals and your actions. And that's something I was taught my second summer in sales school, about how to, and it really, I truly believe that, Southwestern's great at exposing you to success principles. I don't say teaching, because exposing, I think, is a better word there. Obviously
Mm.
sound at teaching sales concepts, but I actually think they might be better at teaching management concepts than either of the first two.
And that's huge. I would probably agree with that. That there's if people want the full Southwestern experience, you gotta go recruit and learn to manage people, because that's more applicable to the future, or to the next role, or to the next phase of your life. That's brilliant. And so, okay, so question for you then: as Thomson Reuters, you start with them, and so now you've been building a career with them for now what, 10 more than that,
13 years.
13
years.
years,
Yep.
yep.
Mhm.
And 13 years later, when you look back at the leadership role that you're now having with them versus the leadership role you had with Southwestern, are there anything, we're talking about some of the similarities, what are the biggest differences, or what are the places where you had to learn and grow from scratch and have like sharpened up in the last 13 years?
And I don't think you ever quit learning. Boy, that's another Southwestern principle too. But
Yeah.
uh,
Student of the game.
yeah, I, fundamentally, I almost work the opposite end of a 20-minute, person to person consumer sale, if you will. Um, I'm knocking on wood when I say this. We're getting ready to close a pretty large deal with one of my larger customers that's been over half of my work life for 15 months at this point. And so,
Wow.
really complex situations and complex relationships with complex customers. And so that, of course, is a lot different than, hey, going from pre-approach to, and everybody likes about the way you're doing business. And that's fundamentally different, if you will. And there is a difference. I'm a believer that it's the purest form of management is to learn how to work with a volunteer army, but there is a difference between working with employees and
Hmm.
you know you know having to fire people and things like that happen sometimes outside
Right.
of that don't. It's not that it never happens at Southwestern, but it's a little different when you work with independent contractors. So
Yeah, and college students that are like, if you tell them you should probably go home, they're in agreement. Usually, they're like, yeah, that's fair. I
yeah,
have -2 units and it's week 9. Like that's
it's
versus the
true.
person that earned that and wanted to be there. And as you've gone through this career and you've built this team, do you still find it interesting that when you were talking about how you acquired a team or there's a new leadership team that comes under you? Do you find it interesting how amazed they are by some of the principles that you learned, or do you ever like share with them like this experience?
Well, actually, I don't know how much I talk about. It's been a while now. Probably I did earlier in my career where I talk about the book business, and I can say that when I first got into Thomson Reuters, there was the group. I'm in a totally different group than I started with. Our business, like all businesses, has to evolve. I started in kind of a, this even makes sense, in more of a content side of our business. It moved to more of a software side of our business later in my career. But there was a point in time that it was on a sales force of about 100 people that 20 or 25 had sold books at some point. Um,
Whoa.
that we had set up a relationship with Southwestern Career Services, and it was a pretty good pipeline for a while. Uh, I can't remember the question you asked now. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the
Yeah, no,
question?
I was just saying, like,
Uh,
when you meet people who are like who never have
oh,
heard
okay.
of Southwestern,
Yeah.
and then you
Here's
tell
the
them, "Hey, I did this," and they go, "What? What's
Actually,
that
I
like?"
really don't. I do very little of that anymore, is to be honest with you. And here's a little bit of reality check for people. And honestly, not everybody gets it. And there's going to be, there's people that I talk to. If I tried to describe what I sold books, they would actually look down on it, not look up on it, if that makes sense. That are
Yeah.
in, I I mean, again, I'm in a large publicly traded company. Most of the senior management is, Ivy League, top MBA, this kind of, and they don't automatically connect. Oh, that sounds like a great experience door to door. They go, what? um, but what I could tell you is when they're exposed to a lot of things that I'll give you an example. We did in our annual sales kickoff, like all companies do that type of thing, equivalent of great recruiters or sales
Yeah.
school, whatever you want to call it, that equivalent in the kind of corporate world, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I was, we were coming up with the outline and threw out to our general manager, said we should do just something less technical and something more 10 steps to have a great year. I'll take it.
Hmm.
And so, some of the stories I told on there were something about the eternal optimist and pessimist, and there was two twins, and there was a pony in there somewhere, and and um, a lot of the stories I told in there were, frankly, they had no idea they were plagiarized, except for Tiffany, because I actually used a little bit of the Mort Utley voice when I did the Mort story. She couldn't help but laugh in there. But my point is I did get a lot of compliments afterwards saying that was way better than the keynote speaker that I don't know how many tens of thousands or more that we paid for that. But their exposure to those kind of things is always kind of, and I'll tell you that I still, when I'm doing some type of speaking engagement, tend to start with a joke or something like that. That frankly, a lot of them were ones I told when I was in first year meetings on campus and stuff like that. That I tweaked to that. And yeah, in fact, not that long ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I reached out to Dan Moore and said, "Hey, just give me a little laundry list of some of your openers, because I can tell you this: I've been exposed to a lot. Again, I'm 51 at this point. The single best public speaker I've ever met is Dan Moore. So,
Yeah, we've talked about
uh,
that on the show before.
yeah.
Yeah,
So, and
she's a brilliant speaker. Yeah.
unbelievable. And I know Dan quite well. And obviously, when you're in the business as long as I did, you develop a personal relationship with him. But I also recruited Dan and Maria's son Daniel and worked with him. His daughters
Yeah.
used to babysit my kids, and Dan's a pretty neat guy. So
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because it's funny you said this. So I sold books, and then afterwards I went to a company called Primerica. I've
uh-huh.
probably heard
Yeah.
of Primerica. It's insurance and investments. And they hype up these events that you go to, and other companies too do this, where it's like, we're gonna have the speaker and they're awesome and do all this stuff. And mind you, you've been exposed to, like, even on videotape, you've been exposed to Mort Utley and Pat Roach and Dan Moore, Lee McCroskey, just these brilliant speakers. And you get to this event, and it's not to belittle the speakers that they have there or anything like that, but you're just so used to this caliber of like public speaking that you don't.
Mhm.
I don't know that I've found someone as good since. You just go, wow, if they heard Dan's Life 101 or something, they would be mind blown right now, or whatever it was.
I fully
So
agree
good.
with that sentiment. Yeah.
So good. One last question about what you're up to now, and I guess I always like to ask, because book people, you can always rely on the fact that they have big goals. And what's the next 10 years look like for you? What's the goal for you with either personally or professionally, whichever is easiest for you to answer?
Great question, and an interesting question at my age. Again, I'm 51, so um, I'm closer, and I'm not looking to retire tomorrow, but I'm closer to the end than the beginning too. I would like to retire in about 10 years. And
Nice.
again, there's pros and cons of large publicly traded companies. One of my friends, in fact, Jonathan Whitaker, who we we roomed together, field managing together. He sold for 4 summers. He helped get me into Thomson Reuters, but he used to like to joke and say that Thomson Reuters gives you bronze handcuffs. They're not quite gold, like, where if you started your own company and sold it for mega $1 million, but you're going to make enough that it's hard to leave too. And so,
Yeah.
I think I probably have one more promotion left in me, but I don't have 20 years left in me. How's that? I'd like to retire young enough to enjoy it. So.
Fair enough. That's
Yeah.
cool. So the end of the line is looking, it's like, but I feel like even if you retire, we're book people, man. You got to do something. You feel like it's kind of like that first summer you're off and you leave, and it's like a Tuesday in July, and you go, I need to be knocking on a door right now. It just the
Oh,
work ethic kind of sticks with
I'm
you.
not kidding you. If you're there as long as I did, it takes years to get over thinking of this as sales school time, or this is whatever.
Yeah.
It takes a while to quit thinking that way. But I don't know. I know that it would, at some point in time in my life, I'd not like to not wake up with a quota. So,
Do you still take cold showers though?
uh, no, I do not take cold showers anymore.
That one
So.
you move on from quick.
Yeah, but and I have kids now, and a lot of the stuff that stuff I would coach a student manager on, I've had those conversations with my kids. I remember I was traveling with Mark Raw when I was a sales manager at one point in time, and watched him do a personal conference with somebody at the time, and he went. Have you ever heard his pile of crap theory?
I don't know if I remember.
All right, I'll try to do this on. I don't know if the video will catch this or not. Okay.
And if you're listening, it's worth coming onto the YouTube feed for this. We're 32 minutes in.
I'll try to describe it visually here too. Okay. So here's a timeline. Okay. On one side, you're young. On the other side, you're old. Okay.
Yeah.
Take a guess what that line represents. That no one ever knows. And he goes, "That's a pile of crap." And I remember, like, people would laugh at that. I remember, you can't tell me how many times I've used this again. I used it with my kids. Said, "Here's the thing: if you're going to be successful in life, there's just a certain amount of crap you're going to have to go through. There's 2 ways you could do it. You could do it while you're young and you have the energy and you get to reap the rewards of it for the rest of your life. Or some people try to do as little crap as possible. What they end up doing is spreading a thin layer of crap over their whole life. I'd
Oh,
recommend the first."
yeah.
Um, and I've had that conversation with my kids, my nephews, and all of that stuff. So yeah,
That's brilliant. That's
yeah,
good.
that's
I'm glad I'm gonna
a Mark Rowism. I don't know if he still uses that, but I've never forgotten that one. Yeah.
I hope he does. My favorite Mark Rao one is where he talks about the football game between all the little animals and all the big animals. Do you remember this one?
No, I never worked with Mark directly, but we were sales managers together. So I was a young sales manager following Mark at one point in time. Spent time, and I know Mark well. In fact, gosh, it wasn't a couple summers ago. Well, I'll tell this story really quick, if that's okay.
Yeah. 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 Love it.
Okay, so in the selling is different now. Like when I was a first year, we were learning how to overcome the computer objection, which is pre the internet objection, which is certainly a long way away from social media, if you follow me.
Yeah.
Um, But I live in kind of a typical suburban, brick house neighborhood, whatever. And those are pretty much all, as you might imagine, have these neighborhood, Facebook pages, etc.
Yep.
And my wife's like, "Hey, everybody's blown up. Some kid selling something. It sure sounds like a book kid." And so I, jump on the page and see people, blast them, oh, this, all that kind of stuff.
I can imagine.
I couldn't resist riling up a little bit. Actually, they don't need a permit. We don't live within the city limits and all that kind of stuff. But I happened to notice that one of the people that commented or liked this book person was Emma, the book girl, Barnett.
Oh, yeah.
And noticed that somebody I knew was friends with her, Sarah Jane, who's now Landis, but it was Sarah Jane Barnett when I knew her, and it's her sister. And so I reached out to Sarah, said, "By any chance, is this you related? Is it your sister?" He's like, "Oh my God, that's my sister." So I send Emma a message, "Hey, make us your last house," and whatever. But I reached out to Mark and talked to
That's awesome.
I went to a Sunday meeting and took him to breakfast, bought some books and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know how I got
That's
on that, but
brilliant.
that's whatever.
No, yeah. And shout out to Emma. Emma's a fan of the show, I believe. She listens to a lot of these. So if you're listening, hey, Emma, hope you're having a good
And
summer.
she was very good. I remember to this day being
Yeah.
impressed with her actual presentation. Like I was, oh, you got this down. I was the
She's
probably
sharp.
typical alumni. At least I hope I tried to sit back and not interrupt and let her sell the kids or whatever. So,
now,
yeah.
now I will say it was funny because I would, and this maybe starts getting into the Southwestern conversation, but the advanced sales tape that you've recorded that is redistributed every year, a lot of the stuff that you said on that was so good is now used as naturally the sales presentation. So you're probably impressed because it was your sharpness and your aptitude that got us to this point and to be able to do that. The questions that you had us ask, man, just brilliant.
First of all, I disagree with the assessment. I used to joke about this, but I kind of think it's true. We used to have these thing called name grade cards. I think it's all done in an iPad now. You wrote down the name of the family and the kid's school, and they were these manila envelopes. I think the only thing I ever invented at Southwestern was taking tape and posting over those so that when it got wet, they didn't get ruined. My point is, I stole everything because from somebody else, and everybody does. That's the reality. And if I had any particular skill set in selling books, it was probably watching what others did really well and trying to figure out what they're doing well and how to make it transferable. I had no idea they still listen to that tape or CD or MP4, whatever the heck it is now. I actually ran into Amy and Ryan Groom at an airport a couple years ago. I had no idea who they were, but I think they introduced themselves to me and like, "Oh, we still listen." I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that's actually still around there." But again, the book business, one of the three things I talked about, the management, all that stuff, but fundamentally understanding sales concepts and principles. It's because everybody steals from everybody, and that culture of sharing is not something you see everywhere else. I'll just tell
Yeah,
you
that's
that.
true. Yeah.
Everything from, I don't know if they still do these or not, the President's Club's calls we used to have on Sunday nights, and to Sunday meetings and all that stuff. I've really tried to promote a culture of sharing within my teams that I've worked with since Southwestern. But because of there's such a great culture of sharing throughout that, it's a constant refinement and moving up of skill set over 150 years now.
Right.
That I think continues to live on. I hope so.
No, and you're right. I mean, a lot of it is sharing, but I mean, I remember listening to what you had to say. For example, just a brief example for people to like maybe who don't remember or maybe didn't get to listen to your advanced sales tip. There was a moment where you were talking about like instead of asking the kid, do you get straight A's or what class is the hardest for you or do you have a hard time with school? Which you might think is a natural question to ask a kid. You suggested instead saying, hey, what topic takes you the most time to get done? And so like even just adding some of the psychology, because then you and your quote was, a good lawyer knows the answer to every question he asks. Same thing. A good book person knows the answer to every question that they ask to find this need. And just the way that you built how to give a good presentation, because everybody harped on the intro, right? And having good rapport and the buying atmosphere, and which is, I mean, that's really where the sale is made. But what I think you were one of the few advanced sales tapes that really like harped on being a professional at the door and during the sit down and just using your names really well and then just knowing how to present it in a way. You said, hey, you use words that an eighth grader can use on the intro, but then when you're doing your demonstration, you don't go, math is hard, right? No, you go, hey, that's the Pythagorean theorem, and using like actual,
Oh gosh,
because
yeah,
then you look more like a professional, right? So those
yeah.
things that you shared there, it's not even that you're right, they're borrowed. I'm sure that somebody, you learned them from somebody, and that's all fine, but at the end of the day, the way you presented it, the way you were able to train, it makes sense why you had such big teams, because the way that you explained and the ease with which you explain things makes it really uh absorbable, right? The problem with some people who are so good at selling books is that when they would go explain how they did it, they were just so good at it that to them it was simple, so it was a lot harder for them to explain it to us mortals, right? And so the way you explained it, you made it really easy to chew, so that way it helped you improve so much faster. So I props to you, my sir. I know you're saying you borrowed it, but still, you deserve praise for that. And
Well,
and
I appreciate
personally,
that.
thank you. Yeah.
Well, I can say that the teaching component of the role might have been my favorite. One of, there's no doubt that kind of watching somebody grow, that when you work with some kid from 18 to whatever, I can't, and I've had many people that I worked with that are married to each other now and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
um, but the teaching component, I truly did enjoy and still enjoy to this day in this role, and take some pride in that. And again, I was a decent book guy. I think my best summer, I never did 10,000 units. 6,000 units was my best summer, something like that. But I was probably a better teacher than I was at actually selling, I'd say. So
Sweet.
yeah,
That's really cool. Well, how about we get into your Southwestern career a little bit? Let me do
sure.
some shout outs and then we can jump into that.
Yep.
Did you need a refill or something like that at all while we're doing
Yeah, I
this,
tell
or
you what, you do this. If you want to take me off camera for 2 minutes, I'll be
yeah,
right back, and you can do your
perfect.
promos. I'll be right
Yes,
back. All right,
sir.
sounds good.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, awesome, guys. We're on the air with Roger Smith, legend of the bookfield and of the book business. So exciting. I want to give a quick couple of shout outs over to Mr. Pat Roach at Southwestern Real Estate. Right now, it's a lucrative industry, guys, and it is full of mediocre standards. But what they're doing out there is really changing the industry. To give you an example, I think 95% of people who start with real estate end up quitting after the first year. At Southwest Real Estate, 95% stay. And that's because of the culture. That's because of the way it pays. That's because of the flexibility. That's because of the time that you can spend with your family at home, and you can help people find their dream home, sell at a time where it's a little difficult to sell. And honestly, guys, regardless of the situation, regardless of what's going on, the community that they have built at that company is fantastic. They kept all the really cool things about Southwestern Advantage. They removed all the drama. Well, they kept 1% of the drama, and it's 99% drama free. But if you sold books and you want to go learn a little bit more about the opportunity of working with Pat and his team, they're in 14 different states now and they're looking to expand. So reach out to us. You get an automatic interview if you come through us. If you tell them that you heard about it through us. So shout out to Pat. Love you guys lots. I also want to give a quick shout out to Thought Leader. It's an online education company that helps people land TEDx talks. They've done over 400 people have landed a TEDx talk through them, and they're looking for your help. So they partnered exclusively with us. They're looking for Southwestern alumni to join their team. Have openings for 2 roles. The first role is the SDR role. You'll be calling warm leads, people who are excited to talk to you, who are looking to learn more about how to do a TEDx talk. Obviously, they have an awesome story to tell, but your job would be to qualify them and make sure they're the right fit for the program, setting an appointment up with an enrollment advisor. Now, if you are on target, you're looking to earn between 50 to 75K per year or more. And of course, a progression to the enrollment advisor role. And now that role is also what they're looking for. We're looking for high caliber people for both of these. Now, the enrollment advisor is you're going to be speaking with genuinely some of the most interesting people in the world who are looking to land a TEDx talk. You'll wake up each day to a calendar that's pre-filled with qualified applicants. So it's like having all your sit downs ready for you. And the earnings for this role are between 130 to 200,000 plus. The standards for the role are high. Obviously, that's what we're looking for alumni to work with them. But for the right person, it could be a career of a lifetime. And so if you're interested, send Dillon Barr. That's Thought Leader's head of sales and client experience. He sold books, of course. One of the funniest book guys we know. And that's DB at thought-leader.com. And you can get a hold of him. The screen has the email. But if you are just listening, that's DB at thoughtleader.com. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. One more shout out over to Cardinal Senior Benefits. And of course, the primary reason that they are able to do so much business in a small amount of time is because of the system that they built. They have a really solid system to generate leads. There's no cold calling, zero prospecting, and they're direct mail leads. So they have a flyer that they send out. People fill it in, talking about final expense insurance. Important to know how to qualify for the life insurance that is available to them, and that they can pay for their funeral expenses once that is the time and if that is needed. So if they're interested, they fill out the information below. It's pretty simple. So if they're getting this card, these lead cards, these people are really interested in talking to you. They get that card in the mail and they have to physically write in their name, date of birth, all that stuff. So solid, warm leads. That's why they are able to get so much such a high return of investment on their time. They're spending almost all of their time with the legit prospect that has taken the time to fill something out and mail it in. It's not like the cheap leads that you can buy online. These are legitimate leads that are looking to do business with them. That's why they can get away and earn so much money with such a relatively low amount of work time. So if the idea of having qualified warm prospects sounds good to you, and doing that every week is a good idea for you and how to spend your time versus like trying to prospect cold calling, give these guys a call. They're doing a 500 referral bonus. So you guys can get and take advantage of that. Now, I'm going to bring Roger back up. He's ready to go. Boom, boom. Hello, sir. Back to
Hey,
you. Oh, man. Well, I'm having a blast so far. I'm sure this is going to be, this is my favorite part of the conversation always because it takes us back to the time. So do you mind if we wind the clocks back and
sure.
go back to the University of Dayton and go back to 1992-ish, figure out how in the heck did you first hear about this crazy internship?
Sure, yeah. I actually first heard of it my freshman year at school when I'd walking by somewhere and saw a campus to go to the union and earn $5,000 or whatever the heck the sign would have said at the time. Um, and sat through, and there's a guy named Tom Rossi who was, I think, a field sales manager at the time that gave an info session, and I probably gave thousands of info sessions over the course of my career. I have no idea how many. Um, but there's always the annoying kid that would kind of get up and walk out and throw your whole rhythm off and lose the momentum. And that was actually me that year. Um,
Oh,
I was just not at a point in my life was really excited about going back and hang out with my friends, blah blah blah, whatever. I literally got out, walked out in the middle when I realized it was selling books away from home, etc. And then the next summer, two friends of mine from high school were recruited by a guy that's a dear friend of me that I talked to the other day. In fact, if I were to recommend somebody to do one of these ponytails podcasts, I would highly recommend reaching out to Michael Hawk, who has done some amazing things since he left Southwestern and at Southwestern. But they were actually on the number one team that summer.
oh,
It was Michael's second summer. 14 kids, sold 30,000 units or whatever heck it was. And then the next going into my parents were in financial difficulties at that time, and I was at home right before going back to school, and they described me without going into all the details and that. Just I said, well, I can go sell books with Jimmy next summer and make some money. And so, one of the first nights out on, at the beginning of the school year, we're sure we were a few Milwaukee's best lights to the wind, if that tells you anything about, the days at University of Dayton. I saw Jimmy and said, hey, can you still get me a job selling books? And come on over. And, gave me a whatever half-hearted notebook presentation that I signed up at the time. And frankly, didn't we didn't do like the hardcore training, learn your sales talk, meet every week, none of that. I think I went to maybe two or three meetings throughout the course of the whole year.
oh.
I did have a pretty good sales manager, a gentleman by the name of Craig Soder,
I've
who,
heard of him.
yep, uh, who Craig, I can tell you the first meeting he was, I don't know what he was teaching, something about using names, and he was talking about, Mr. Annawalt. And Craig and I went to the same junior high, and I had Mr. Annawalt too. I've never forgotten that connection. It was pretty random. Um, but ended up going out that summer, and it was just, I can truly say that I don't, you know, nobody gets to rewind the clock and knows what if you will. But I don't know where I'd be had I not sold books that summer, because I was a little bit of a lost puppy, way too far into the wrong principles of college, if you will, and wasn't
Yeah.
on the right track. And you know it was at a place that kind of needed those success principles. And, even going into those, that, again, I did not spend all year learning my sales talk, didn't really know what I was getting into at all. Um, I remember getting down to, when you stay like an hour outside of Nashville for sales school, wherever it is. And they gave the sales talk presentation in front of the group, and they talked about losing your cool card and doing all this stuff. And I still definitely had a pretty big cool card. I remember telling Jim Lazowski, says, Jim, I'll do whatever you want me to do, but I'm not losing my cool card, wherever the hell that is. And that was kind of me the first night in sales school. But then, good, bad, or indifferent, I had a competitive streak in me, and then didn't take too long before and damn it, if they're going to beat me to the cold shower, that kind of stuff. And I got pretty into it pretty quickly, and had at least a moderately successful first summer. Got in the superstar book and all that kind of stuff. And you know, um, even before we started selecting students to come back that summer, I actually called Craig and said, "Hey, I got to know if I can come back, because I have these other plans that And I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to be here for a while, I'd say.
It grabbed you. So
Yeah.
I've a couple of questions about this, because, and especially for
Yeah.
people who were lifers, I guess. Well, I guess it wasn't lifer, but
Yeah.
you were on
Felt like
decaders.
it. It felt like it.
Yeah, I guess it's true. I guess first off, I always like to ask about the specifics of the first summer, because, or if as
Yep.
much as you can remember, because that's kind of the one that really changes your life. I mean, other summers you have that are really impactful, but I guess first off, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but when you get to sales school and you saw 92, you would have still been able to see more Utley in person. Give
Nope.
his
No, I think
Oh, was he
90.
gone
I
at that
think
point?
90 was his last summer.
Oh, darn. So
Yeah. So
that's
yeah.
rough. But then, you were, especially for someone like yourself, where you describe yourself as being into the wrong principles of college, right?
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part of you to adjust? Was it, you said, the cool card a little bit, but was it the habits? Was it just the coachability? Was it the overall, like, environment of being amongst other people who were also pretty sharp? Or what for you was the biggest challenge?
Yeah. And it's foreign to everybody. And we used to do the thing when it was I think a Trey George thing, where you sign your name and then you have them sign it with their left hand, and you've signed your name thousands of times. This is just one different hand. This is going to all feel different to you. And that's really true with everybody that sells books. And I do remember, if there was such a thing as you know, it obviously had some impact. If whatever, how many years later, I still remember this. There was a point in time in Thursday of sales school. I do think I'm a quick learner and fairly smart, and learning the sales talk, all that stuff. But there's one of the sales student managers in my team, in my org that summer, that I kind of respected in sales school, and did the demo, and I just blew it in front of them. Everybody has that moment in sales school where you just
Yep.
nothing comes together. And then that day, and I think I've even heard other people on this comment talk about it. It's amazing the impact of the Alan Clements speech that he used to have in sales school. And that was the one where he tells the story how he wasn't in the right direction, and his wealthy dad dropped him off at sales school and looked at him with a tear in his eye and said, "Alan, you can accomplish something with your life, but when are you going to start?" And I remember that really, really hit me, really, really
Yeah.
impacted me. And that afternoon, I asked Jim, I'm like seriously, like emotional, like, "Jim, can I do this thing?" And he's like, "You can do it. I believe in you." It was like, kind of almost picture perfect thing. And I did have, again, I was not a perfect book kid. I can't say I had the perfect schedule, whatever. Pretty good success right away, in selling, and hit President's Club a couple times my first summer. And it was and very blessed to be. And Michael Hawk's an amazing person, and quite an OL, and has done some neat things. I think that would be good to get him on one of these things. And obviously, Soda Pop is. And this is going to sound weird, perhaps, but if you were there, you'll get it. I actually can't remember a more fun social event. And this is going to sound weird, okay? Than Craig Soder's funeral. I'm being
Interesting.
serious, yeah. And you think about, like, I've never been in that kind of situation. The impact he had on people,
Yeah.
and the amount of people that flooded back, and the memories over that weekend, and the good time we all had together is exactly what he would have wanted. Um,
Mm.
but that the chance to make that impact, obviously anybody that's around as long as I was, that there's a draw to that, the chance to really shape a person's life, if you will. And I've never met a more genuine person with a bigger heart than Craig Soder. So in
Yeah.
fact, we have a former Real Deal fantasy football league that a bunch of us are in and talk some trash with. In fact, you might like this story. Whoever gets last place, and Shane Merrick, shout out Shane, got the chance to experience this last year. Had to spend from 7:59 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. at the Waffle House off of Elm Hill Pike. Um, and and
That's awesome.
the winner, for every waffle they subtract out, and the winner gets the Craig Soder Memorial Trophy. That's a kind of traveling trophy. So he was in that league with us for years. So
That's awesome. That is the funniest thing.
yeah,
Every book person knows that Waffle House. We all had a conversation with
I
someone at that
I,
Waffle
si-
House.
I signed a lot of experienced deal agreements at that Waffle House.
When that Waffle House closes, we'll have to all go for like the
Yeah,
last day to just meet up. We'll do an alumni reunion there. Just be like,
there
pay
you go.
respects, take our hats off. Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you bring up Craig, because he's honestly, I think Craig Soder might be the alumni that has been brought up, talked about, or praised, justifiably so, the most out of in these
It's not
episodes.
not surprising. Yeah,
Right? It
and
isn't, right?
I was a sales engineer for a long time, and I'd love to say that I kept up with everybody since then, but that would be totally untruthful. I've never like it was very apparent even after you were under Craig's supervision per se how much he still cared. It's just hard to
Yeah,
put into words, and I love that man. I loved, I guess, is the more appropriate.
yeah.
Worked with Mary Soder, his daughter sold with me, and just an amazing individual. So,
Yeah, may he rest in peace.
yep,
And every time he comes up, we always kind of give a tribute, because
yeah,
he's a person that really just, I mean, from a standpoint of impacting people's lives in that company. I don't know. I think that he's been the biggest. It's not to quantify it, but I don't know. Again, he just comes up so much, and I regret not being able to know him that well. He was already kind of out of the business and kind of towards the end. So when he passed, I barely had gotten a chance to meet him or shake his hand like once or twice, but I understood very well the significance of his legacy. And yeah, so
I
big.
got to experience Craig with some of my biggest highs, when I met my wife, all that stuff, but I also got to be with Craig and have him pick me up at some of my lowest lows, and an amazing individual. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for those words. I think that's important to honor
mhm.
him when we can. And to ask one more question about kind of like that first initial experience for you, and just to kind of get some perspective. Everybody, especially when they first go to the book field, sometimes it's usually
Yeah.
about money, especially people who sold like in the
Yep.
90s, and it's paying for school. But as maybe, I don't know if this happened your first summer or not, but at some point in your career, it stops becoming about that and starts
Mhm.
becoming about something else.
Yep.
What was it for you that just really tugged at your heart to kind of go, I need to do this for a while, and I need to do it well?
Again, without going too far into it, I was I knew I needed to change the direction of my life. I had signed up for the military before my first summer, and the reason I
Oh, wow.
called Craig back, middle of my first summer, saying, "Hey, I can still get out of this if you're going to invite me back, but you got to tell me if you're going to invite me back." Like just the kind of exposure to these success principles, all this stuff, and it was pretty quickly. I remember how I felt about Jim, who had recruited me, and wanted to experience that again, and wanted to be that person for others. And
Cool.
I was not a natural leader. There's one of the sales managers, a guy by the name Craig Buffkin, wildly successful, runs a retained search firm here in Nashville now. But he, have you ever read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I've
Oh, yeah.
probably read that 20 times in my life without exaggeration. But I was a little rough around the edges as a manager, leader, recruiter in the beginning. And remember, I said something to piss him off at some point in time. He says, "You need to read this book." I said, "Read it twice." He's like, "You need to read it again." My first couple teams didn't kill it. It wasn't until really my fourth summer started really like I had success recruiting, but really started to have success as a team builder at that point in time. And
Yeah.
and part of it was learning how to in a weird way say I love you to the people that you're managing with and know they care about you. So um,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Brilliant. And so let's kind of get into those gears, and I'm sure some stories will come out naturally out of this. But
Yep.
you're figuring it out. You come out multiple summers, and now you're starting to figure this out. what were some of the key moments that kind of help you, like, if I don't know if they were aha moments or not, but the key instances where you go, oh man, this is different. I can tell this is different, and this is going to be a good year for my team. Like, 'cause, I mean, I'm sure you had
Yeah.
the confidence going into it, but what happened?
Great question. I'll just kind of flash through. Like my second summer, okay, summers. First, it's one of those things. Oh, you got to be an OL, and that means that you didn't have more experienced people to do it. Is the reality when you were recruited a big team your second summer? It wasn't your.
Yeah,
Oh, we see the potential you have. That's not reality.
no,
Um, my third
that's so
summer
true.
was my third summer was the proverbial summer in hell. I used to tell the
Uh,
story when I ran the group one checkout meetings, which was a true story. At the end of my third summer, stopping at the Florida state line, literally getting out of my car and spitting at this and saying, "I'll never get stepping foot in this state again." It was just an awful experience.
oh,
The org blub.
man.
There was not much good about that, other than that, I got to live with Jeff Dobines for a bit during that
Yep.
summer when he wasn't on my team, but I won't go too far into that. Just would too divergent, if you will. But then my fourth summer, I recruited a 15-person team, and again, it was really Jonathan Whitaker that, every summer I did do the whole thing, like interview, what did I do right, what did I do wrong, and how can I get better, and all that kind of stuff. And Jonathan really explaining to me that, hey, tell them you love them, and mean that seriously. And that's when it really made a point. I always cared, but I made sure they knew I cared. And we've all heard the expression before: people don't care how much you know, they know until they know how much you care. And it started to impact that at a pretty, I think it was a top 10 team that summer. The fifth summer, recruited a 20-person team, and they were a top team, but it was tough. Just fought every inch of
Mm.
it. Was had a lot of early leavers, and it was just tough. In fact, that was the one time I went cold before, if you will, cold meaning translated, when you decide you're not coming back.
Yeah.
Um, I'll tell this story for a minute here. So anybody that, at least the experienced people who run delivery school, et cetera, which is, when you teach them how to deliver their books,
Yeah.
you have to have that, because especially a lot of kids got off schedule towards them. You have to have that kind of cold towel thrown in their face feel of a delivery school hardcore approach. And I was running delivery school for, multi orgs. I was pretty experienced at that point in time. And one of the young ladies who was a top first year came, and she was late. And I did exactly what you're supposed to do at the time. I said, looked at her sternly. I can't believe anybody would be late to the most important meeting of the year, and tried to scare the shit out of her, which I did. Because again, it's textbook what you're supposed to do at the time. But then again, it was a big team, but it was just a tough summer. Fought every inch of it. And, I would say it was, at the end of that, I was like, going, I always wanted to be a successful DSL, all that, but I don't know if I can do it. And if I can't do it, when should I leave now? And all of those kind
Yeah.
of emotions were going through, and, actually went cold. And Chris Samuels, who's my sales manager at the time, and I worked very closely with Chris for a very long time, told him I was going to leave. It was the awards banquet weekend. He was probably pissed at me because, oh, this is my right hand. He's being a jackass at awards banquet weekend or whatever, which I was. And I remember him. Part of it was telling me that, because Stephanie Moss was the young lady I spoke on. We're dear friends now. In fact, our kids are actually friends now too, which is weird. Um, the When she went through checkout, like, her sales manager left, and Chris was going to become her sales manager, and she told Chris that, hey, I don't know who I'm going to work with, but, I really don't want to work with Roger Smith. And I remember him going, hey, here's what you suck at. And if she's telling me this, that's a problem. And, drinking at the awards banquet, normal stuff. And, I'm like, why did you say this to me? I was all emotional, all this kind of stuff. And like I said, I was cold at this point. I was not going to come back. And, Chris was going to meet with me. We met in the parking lot of some hotel by the airport in Raleigh, Durham, to, proverbially the turnaround talk. I don't think he really thought I was really cold at the time, because I got in, and he has his Mont Blanc pen in his hand, and he throws it down on the ground. He goes, what the fuck? I'll say it. What the fuck did you say something to Stephanie Miles for? Like, you betrayed my trust, all this. And I was like, I told you I'm not good at this. I should leave. And it was like all emotional. I laughed, and, it wasn't a good, like, he did not turn me around there. It was, we're done. We're leaving. And KJ and I were living together at the time, and drove back to the apartment, and KJ was with his girlfriend. He could tell I was upset. He sent her on his way. And it was actually KJ that really kind of built my confidence back up that, hey, you could do this thing. And in that next summer, that team that I recruited, they really were the building blocks of the real deal. And the real deal, we did have some, and it was the people, not me. And, we had a summer that we had 50 student managers that averaged over 5,000 units. It was, and that
That's
summer,
crazy.
that team really became the building blocks of it. So.
What shit. Wow. Okay. Questions. So many questions.
Yeah.
You're awesome. Thank you for sharing. Oh man. I guess question number one overall is there's a moment where you're like, no way in hell I'm doing this. KJ talks to you, turns you around.
Yeah.
And then where do you start? Because like I feel like that when you're going and you're building, like, and I saw this because my brother built a DSM base,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it always kind of built momentum, but this is different because you were like, no way. So there's a lot of planning that you didn't get to do, a lot of conversations you probably didn't get to have.
Well, again, this is September. This is awards banquet time. It's early.
So
yeah, and at least that's when we did them back then, September, maybe October. I don't remember when it was. And the reality was at the time, it wasn't that I didn't want to be in the business. I lacked confidence. And it truly was. I let KJ's confidence in me become my confidence in me. And we'd spent a lot of time around each other that he was able to inspire the confidence in a genuine way that said, all right, let's give this one more try. And it worked. So
it worked out. So now you have this very clear picture. So now you're going back and you're like, all right, we're doing this then. This is it. But this is going to happen. And you have this giant base, 50 student managers do 5,000 units plus. That's insane. So question for you, I like to ask this of the DSMs.
Average, not all of them, just to be clear.
Oh, so that's fair.
I don't want to over exaggerate. So
that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's still impressive.
That was the summer Dustin broke the record. So yeah, it was Dustin's third summer. Yeah,
he pulled a lot of the
4 kids sell 10,000 units that summer, and that was when that was a big deal.
Right. Well, and so I guess I'll ask about that. I'll note that and ask about that too, because that's kind of, you got to see the outside version of him prepping to go do that, which is kind of awesome. But on the other hand, you've seen probably some of the best you've worked with, and also coached some of the best salespeople that ever have done the program. And in your opinion, what makes you got 2 students that are pretty even keel, same upbringing, same quote unquote on paper look the same. What makes one better than the other at selling books or at sales in general?
Yeah. I'll take this kind of bigger than the question, if you will. There's a book, have you ever read, called Grit?
No, I've heard of it. I have not yet read Grit.
I mean this tongue in cheek. Any self-respecting book man needs to read that book.
Fair enough.
No, I mean that. I say that tongue in cheek. Don't get me wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
But the fundamental concept of it is that is the person with the prolonged period of focus that's going to win. It's the will more than the skill. And I truly believe that to be the case. And the only layer I would add to it is the truly the willingness and the as they used to say, to be smart enough to be dumb enough to be teachable. The willingness to learn. It's those 2 things combined. And I don't think that's unique to Southwestern. Again, go read the book Grit. That is really it in a nutshell. The prolonged period of concentration and focus wins every time. So
that's brilliant. I'm going to order that on Amazon right like as soon as we get done with this call.
Yeah, I just finished my last book I read, and I've been trying to get back into positive reading, if you will, the last 3 years in particular. I've committed myself to reading at least 1 positive book a month, which I've done more than that for several years. I'd gotten away from that a little bit in my career, but I heard on the Ponytails podcast, just read Talent Code. So finished it on Saturday.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad you got one. I'll send you mine, by the way.
So I'd love to read it. Yeah.
I'll send it to you. Now I got like 4 people I got to send this book out to, but I will send it to you. Okay. So now you're going into the summer. Dustin Hillis breaks a record. What do you think? Because Kaya had the record like multiple times now at this point, and going in,
I think she had it once or twice. I think.
Yeah. Right. She hit it like 18,000, and then she broke it with like another 19.
Yeah.
And you have Dave Brown, who's also on his way. Like they were competing kind of like that rose.
Yeah, Dave did about 18,000 units that summer, and Dustin did 20. So
wow. Yeah. What was that prep like?
Dave worked with Pat. I worked with Dustin. So
right. And so going into that from the perspective of like your his manager, what was different? Did you know that this was happening? Can you see it? Like what did that look like, and how did that, in your eyes, how did that go down?
Saw every step of it because I have ESPN. Just kidding.
should have been. That's some skill, man.
Uh, no, Dustin probably knows this at this point. I would love to say that, and he told me his goals to do it. I'd love to say that oh, put it in granite. It's definitely happening. I was like, yeah, you are, inside,
Yeah.
just to be honest with you. I knew he'd
No,
have a
that's
great
fair.
summer, but that I knew he was going to do 20,000 units. Hell no.
Well, and just for perspective for people listening who might not know, before you continue, he comes out his first summer, sells what, 6,000 units?
Sold 7,000 first summer,
Yeah.
9,500 second summer, and 20,000 third.
So it's his third summer when it wasn't like,
Yeah.
because some people think, oh, he broke the record, so he must have been doing it for 10 years. No, it was like,
It was,
and then he skipped the
he was
summer,
still a
didn't he?
student. No, he did not. He was still a student at the University of Tennessee.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, this
Yeah.
is like unheard of, like that progression of, 7,000, 9,500, and then boom, you blow up like that.
Yeah.
Nobody's done that recently, I don't think. But okay. So this is his third summer, still a student, and you're hearing about these goals. And then what did it look like from your side as it's progressing?
And it was a special summer. That was, again, we had a lot of success around our group. And I don't remember when the heck he first hit more that summer, third week, something like that. And when he started to pop out some big numbers, like, holy crap, this might actually happen. And then when he hit 2,000 units a week, it was like, oh my God. And this was my first summer I was married to my wife. And, back when they faxed you stats every night, um,
Yeah.
she would stay up to hear all the good news patrol and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, that's another management principle that I learned at Southwestern that applies, that good news creates expectation. Expectation creates results. And that isn't a commonly known thing in all sales organizations, all companies in the world. But it was very apparent. It was pretty special, at least by halfway through the summer. And again, there was lots of success, but he was certainly the greatest success. And what I predicted, oh gosh, Dustin's going to be the CEO one day. No, and I don't think he would even say that too. But it was a special. And that being said, there's I think it was called A Man in the Mirror.
Yeah.
I'll do it for you. The Tom Brady, This Is My Patriots toilet paper, ESPN series. Did you watch that? Any chance on ESPN? Okay.
Yeah. It's I mean, he's a freak of nature, but yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, there's a story in there. I think it's episode 8 or 9. I think it's called Maybe, and it's about I think it was they painted it as some Chinese proverb, or the plane crashed and you weren't on it. Was that good or bad? Maybe. And everything was maybe, maybe, maybe. And as much success as that was there that summer, it also laid the groundwork for not as much success the next year too.
Oh, interesting.
Everything's always a maybe, because the reality is anyway, I just won't go further into that, but there's never as good as you are on your best day, and you're never as bad as you are on your worst day.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. That's it. But it must have been really crazy to when he comes back to checkout and he's got 20,000 chalked up on the board, and you're like, what the heck is happening?
And even to the day, the reality is that people that sold that many books, and nobody had sold that many books to that level, to be clear, but it wasn't unusual if somebody had wrote up 14,000 units to deliver 12 at that point. For him to write up 20 and deliver 20, even it wasn't until checkout, holy crap, it actually happened,
Right.
Wow. And again, there was good out of that, and there was bad that came out of that too. But it was special. I don't know a better way to say it. And
yeah,
sorry.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, that's good. Fair enough. For people listening in that want to learn a little bit more about that, we were having Dustin on in the show. His episode will probably air in September. So, and we'll ask him about that so we can get into some of the details of that as well. But I always wanted to hear it from his manager's perspective, because that's a weird thing that, a lot of people who've talked about leadership on the show have talked about how to handle the negative sides of the people who aren't under, how to make people who aren't producing as much as they can produce as much as they can. But I feel like there's also problems when you have or unexpected, challenges that arise when you have someone who's just so successful. Then it's like, how do you manage that afterward?
Well, and I don't know how relevant this is, and if you don't find it relevant, just feel free to cut me off. But the Pareto's principle concept, where 20% of the people do 80% of the results. That's something I was exposed to at Southwestern, and I used to, when I was a sales manager, I had lots of students finish in the top 5, if you will, over the course of the 10 summers. But I would always, with the first years, we'd kind of send them all out there, and you do everything you could and in sales call, all that stuff. But I always wanted to be there ideally for Sunday meeting week 3 or 4, and that's when I teach the 20/80 rule and the price build up, some of the stuff that's on that cassette. And you would always see there'd be some people that would jump, and I got this from Soder. Then you see who you're gonna. So I always managed the student managers and a few first years as a sales manager. Would almost write the same letter every summer to somebody that said, "Hey, you ever think you might finish number one?" And Dustin was one of those guys that first summer I challenged that way. And those are the ones you praise but push, and it's a
Right.
balancing act. Yeah.
That's hard. That's hard coaching. Like, I always think of people who are like, how do you coach like Michael Jordan? And I'm not saying Dustin per se was Michael Jordan, because there's a lot of people who sold a lot of books
Yeah.
that also had amazing other skills, right? Consistency, like Ron Alford, who hit Mort 75 times. That's a different level of consistency that you're just like,
For
what?
sure. Ron's a good man, and he's a Steelers fan too. So I got him a Heinz Ward. I got him a Heinz Ward signed football. I gave it to him one time. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny. But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, the people who are just so good at things that you
Mhm.
go, man, how do you get coached? Because it's just, how does Steph Curry listen to Steph Kerr? You know what I
Well,
mean? How
yeah.
that's such a different principle.
But I'll also say this though, is that that, and again, I don't think that anybody's success, and no, and we all ride on the shoulders of others. But that summer in particular, I had Amanda True, Ed Stone, Aaron Brooks, and just some amazing student managers. And that was speaking of the OLs from that summer. I apologize. I know I left some of them off. Heather Drozda, there was a bunch of them there that I do think that you know anybody's success is partially due to what the environment's created by others. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of those. And Keith Kimball's my best man at my wedding, sold with me for 10 summers, and just some amazing people.
So cool, man. That what a career and legacy that you left. And so, looking back now, is there anything that you think you would do different, or anything that you would have done, uh, or any advice you would give yourself back then, knowing what you know now?
I, the reality is what person, and there are some, most of us would wish we had a tighter schedule when we're actually knocking on doors. And I could throw
Yeah,
myself in that
yeah,
category too.
fair.
Um, there's lots of things that I could have done better, and mistakes I made personally and professionally and all of that kind of stuff. But you don't, it's not as cognitive. I actually talked to Matt Atchison not that long ago, and we were talking about one of the things that came up was, and we were kids managing people,
Yeah,
and you don't
yeah,
realize that, like, sometimes they don't realize you're still a 26 or 20, you're still a kid, you know. um, so you learn through all of that, and you do. I'll phrase it this way. Again, I don't think Southwestern is the only way anybody can be successful by far. I don't think selling books is the right thing for everybody to do, but I think it's a really good thing for a lot of people to do, and a
mm,
lot of people to do at least until they can chance to manage a team. Ideally, the steepest learning curves to at least you run an org and field manage or whatever. But again, that doesn't mean that everybody should do all of that. Um, but then there is a kind of a career side of it that I think we can get lost in from time to time. Um, I'll give you just a slight story to give you perspective of what I mean by that. Again, I'd mentioned when I started at Thomson Reuters, and at the time it was 60,000 people, $16 billion annual revenue, and we'd hired a bunch of book people. And one of the sales managers at the time, when they were quote unquote losing people to Thomson Reuters, made the comment, "Oh, we should buy Thomson Reuters. You're a
mm.
$200 million privately held company. This is a 16 million." That's it. Just that my point is the lack of reality you have when your only exposure is in that book business. And
Yes.
it is still a for-profit business. And again, it was great, but I think that there's some people that don't, and I know I was one of them, don't take the broad lens to decide, is this really where should be at this time, and is this retirement plan exactly what I should be doing, if you will. So, but again,
Yeah, fair.
I wouldn't change. I wouldn't have. I think everybody might say it's, at least long timers, a common thing here is I should have left one some earlier, but I don't know. I wouldn't change anything that way. It was a great experience. And to this day
Yeah.
is a huge part of my life. So
Yeah, it's an awesome ride. And I was having this conversation with Lee a couple months ago at his house. And we were talking about like just you look back and you think, and his quote is the one that's like, "There's more to life than Southwest Airlines." And you're like,
yeah,
yeah, it's once it
yeah.
and you don't really see that until you leave, and you, for better or worse, you see the corporate world for what it is and other places you can go, and the good that you got from it, and maybe some of the stuff that you should have like let go of, and you start really understanding the scope of the world. For example, you stop caring about how many units someone sold. You'll meet
Oh yeah.
someone and it doesn't
Hopefully you
matter,
did it long before then, but yes, you're right there too. And even things like, having a salary is actually not, it doesn't make you, it isn't a, I'm not saying it's necessary, but not a bad thing either,
Wow.
so.
Sometimes that security is nice.
So,
Yeah, that's fair. And you don't see that until until you leave. It's kind of hard to
mhm,
explain to someone who's still in,
yeah,
because and understandably so, they still believe in what they're doing, and they probably should. Otherwise, they're probably not going to be
you
as
shouldn't do it.
successful.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
there was a big portion of my life I thought everybody should sell books, and I needed to be that bought in at that point in time in my life for what
yeah,
I was doing. But you can still feel how valuable it was, but also realize, well, maybe not everybody. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. And you leave and you start going, wow, I can go to that wedding this summer or whatever. Just some of the little things that start coming back to you and you go, oh, okay. There. I think that's one of the things I've learned over this is, we've talked to people who sold 700 units for one summer, and we're about to have, Dustin Hillis who sold 20,000 units for multiple
yep,
summers. And we're all the same over, there's something about us that, we're all ponies. So we bought into something, whether it was for the money or the travel or whatever, but at the end of the day, we all stayed and finished because we believed in ourselves and we wanted the challenge and we wanted to grow and wanted to do this. And that's really what brings us all together. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter how many units you sold. That doesn't really direct you on how successful you'll
100%.
be. But and I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is just who cares? What
Yep.
you did it. You finished it. You cried in the corner on a Tuesday, week 3. I know you did because I did. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a cool lesson, but man, that's awesome. That's so awesome, Roger. Well, I mean, I think if you have a couple more stories to share, or should we jump into some ponytails for like the bigger stories? It's your call.
Whatever. This is your rodeo. I'm happy to do either way. So yeah.
Okay, I think the last question I'll ask you before we go into ponytails
Hmm.
is, on the other hand, lessons that you've learned along the way from leadership standpoint, that like any like top 3 principles that you would give someone who's either trying to just now recruit, maybe someone who's still listening in, who's still selling books, or maybe someone who's at a different company who's really just trying to understand how to build a good culture and a good in a solid foundation for a big team. A few tips on that.
Yeah, I apologize. I probably would be repetitive here, meaning
Oh,
that I still think that the foundation of the mother of all management principles is the student manager creed. I still believe that to this day,
start
and
there.
I believe the concepts of creating a culture of both sharing good news, because good news creates expectation, expectation creates results, and the control of bad news. The
Oh,
concept of preaching, we affect each other and having a positive attitude in a group is how you foundationally form the right culture in any organization. So,
brilliant. I love those. And those are easy to write down. So if you're listening, ooh, that's good. Write that down. Classic book, man. Phrasing right there. Well, yeah, let's jump into some ponytails. I'm excited for these. I know you have a couple that are hopefully you're excited to tell. I'll run a couple of shout outs. Did you need a refill or anything again,
go
or
for it. Do your shout
cool?
outs. There you go.
Couple more shout outs. We'll close it up with this. And this is for either Roger or anybody listening out there who is looking for some online content. So, like, guys, we're in 2022, and this is something that maybe Southwestern didn't teach us that well to use because we were doing it the old school way. But if you're a reputable business, you're going to need a solid website. The masterminds behind our websites are VDisain. That's Oscar Cohoa, who's still actually selling books, and then Oliver Reynas, who is an alumni of our program. And these guys are doing it professionally. They're doing it in a very solid and fluid way. Now, here's the thing: instead of paying $25,000, $50,000 to build your company's website, which you might need if you're doing integrations and stuff like that, like we have, yeah, you can do one for yourself pretty cheaply. But we're talking about the complicated websites that need integrations. Maybe you need an app developed, something like that. These guys are the ones to do it for you. And since they're in Estonia, it's a bit of a discount for you. So if you guys want to hear more about how to get that online presence going for you and how to do some integrations so you can drive your traffic in the right direction, let us know. We'll put you in touch with them, and they can get you hooked up with a solid website that looks professional but does all the things in the background that you need it to, so you don't have to spend a lot of time doing that. Just automate it. Also, shout out to EnLight.Energy, solar company. I don't know if Roger, if you ever met Julio Hernandez, he sold right at the same time that you were around.
Course, yeah.
Yeah, Julio is a stud, Eagle Blitz guy, and now he has his own solar company. Nick Taverdi, actually, who works with us as well, is there. So if you want to work with someone like that, have a big impact on changing the planet, make good money, and work with a solid team, that is a good opportunity here. A sale every other week in solar is enough for a 6-figure income, and it's booming right now, especially because the electric costs are so high thanks to the inflation rates, and just it's crazy right now for electric bills, especially this summer. It's going to be record high. So you can go and help people with that. You can help them save some money by switching to solar, because you're just replacing that bill. You're not making them pay anything extra. It's a phenomenal opportunity for you, and they are looking to hire. Doesn't matter what state you live in, they can use you. And then last, shout out to Cardinal. They started advertising, like I said, with us about 2 months ago, 2-3 months ago. 27 former book people are there on their team when they first started. Now they have 31. You're welcome. And a couple more people down in the pipeline. The main reason that those alumni came on board with Cardinal was because of the culture, of course, and the system that they have set up. And they've done an amazing job with all the good cultural aspects. They got solid camaraderie, hands-on training, a lot of fun that they're having there. And of course, they remove all the bad parts like cold calling, 80 hours a week, right? No flexibility, that kind of stuff. So on top of that, you can make pretty good living without having to sacrifice a lot of time. So their agents on average or their top performers on average are grossing about 12 to 15,000 per week. And they're working about 31 to 35 hours a week to earn that. So they're on a growth mode. They're doubling every year since 2022, and they're looking to do it again this year. If you want to know why so many people are switching over, reach out to us. There's a link below you can click on to refer yourself or a friend, and there's a $500 referral bonus for that. So that is Cardinal. And so now, time for some ponytails. So now, if people don't know, and again, people for the first time listeners, this is where we save some of our better stories, more profound stories, funniest, craziest. I don't know. It's our guest's choice to hear or to tell. And so, Roger, the mic is yours. Have at it. Here is Roger Smith's ponytails.
Sure. And I don't know that I'm going to have really long stories, but I have kind of a few of them rapid fire, if you will.
Sure.
So I will tell you, my first Sizzler, 1992, was interesting. We used to go to Venezuela at the time, and actually this might have been my third summer. I don't remember, whatever it was. We went to Venezuela a few times. Had to be my third because we never went back after this. Because while we were there, the country experienced a coup d'état. I kid you not. So we were at this resort, and we used to go there because beers were 25 cents, and all that kind of crazy stuff you did at the time. But one day, all of a sudden, there's these guys walking up the beach in machine guns, and all of a sudden, there was a military presence everywhere. And we're kids. We're like, "Oh, this is awesome!" We couldn't leave the resort. But we still had a blast. But DC's director group, those kids couldn't get home for a few days because they had commercial flights. And Soder's director group, we were able to get home in time because we had a chartered flight. But it's interesting now that I think of that as I'm a parent, going, my God, those parents must have flipped out. But we were like, whatever, this is a blast, So I guess that would have been 94, my third summer. I will tell you, again, kind of rapid fire here.
Wow.
But second story, being organized in deliveries can keep you out of the clink. What the heck do I mean by that? My second summer, we were living in this really crap hole apartment in the middle of nowhere, rural Illinois. And finished a day deliveries and knocked on the door, and it was the police. And they took me out and questioned me. And I was driving a crappy little black pickup truck at the time that had this dent on the front fender. Who knows? But apparently there was a little black pickup truck that had hit and run and killed somebody that day in the county. And I got questioned if it was me, but I was able to pull out I was there at this time and there at this time. And because I had all of that, think about it, deliveries is the one time you'd have all of that. I got, all right, go on your way. I was like, whoa.
That little lesson at sales delivery school that they don't teach you, but that's why you want to stay organized.
Yeah. Again, just kind of small rapid fire stories here.
This is great.
My fifth summer, that summer, like I said, it was a 20-person team, all this stuff, but it was a fight the whole way. Um, it was the one Sunday meeting I missed in all my summers. I had a late night Subway Saturday night that got me a pretty good case of food poisoning. That
Oh.
I was a miserable puppy, both ends miserable, and but it worked out because it turns out that Sunday I had lined up some Sunday speakers, alumni speakers. Michael Hawk, my first summer, sold 4 summers, was DSL. His wife Kathy sold for 10 or 11 summers, and I was like, Michael, I can't go, and they ran the Sunday meeting for me. And then, by the way, a year or two later, he told me that they found a joint that some kid had. Part of why it was a rough summer, I guess. One of the kids had left at their lake house.
Yikes.
But I ended up spending away everyone else at the Sunday meeting. I was getting an IV to try to get over the food poisoning. Yep.
Brutal.
And just 2 last ones again, rapid fire. I'll tell you when I realized it really was a scam. Okay. Joke around, how many times would you hear, oh, that thing's a scam,
Yeah.
And I guess it was probably my 12th or 13th summer at this point. Lester was living with me, and as a sales manager time, your summer's really kind of the spring, and you need to kind of not be 80 hours a week during the summer because that's your time to do it. And so we were going to, I think, whatever, play some games and have a drink or two and some food and just whatever, driving down Donaldson Pike. I still remember, and we see the familiar green backpack and some kid. We go, oh my God, there's a book kid right there. We go, let's watch him for a while. And we see him walking. We're like, don't do it, kid. And he goes into the tank. He goes into the YMCA. He was clearly off schedule, And so like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And so Lester and I pull up. And can you imagine you're some off schedule first year, third week of the summer, thinking you get ready to quit, and two DSMs you saw speak on stage in sales school pull up behind you, go, what are you doing? And that's what we did. And we end up
like they're watching us.
Yeah, what can you imagine? So the kid was a walker, didn't have bike yet. Went and bought the kid a bike, and actually went and knocked on doors with him for a gold period, and bought some books from him before he left. And the kid ended up finishing the summer, and I have no idea what his name was. He didn't do very well, like 800 units, something like that. And I realized it was a scam when he never delivered my books. And to the day, he literally never delivered my books, and so I had to go into customer service to go, "Can I get these books I paid for?" And Lester and I laughed about it. It really is a scam after all these years,
What a jerk! Hey, if you're listening, kid,
no,
get Roger his books.
He was a kid, and another soderism. People are as honest as their pocketbook allows them to be. That's the reality.
Fair enough.
So, and then the last story, I won't go into it all because I got a feeling you're going to hear it deeper. And I imagine if you were in sales school, you probably have already heard it. But I'll let Dustin do it full justice. The tick story. Have you heard that before, Andres?
No, I don't think I have. This is awesome.
All right. Sorry, I am going to steal a little of this, Dustin. I apologize because it won't make sense. Okay. So Dustin's first summer, he was selling in rural Missouri, Southwest Missouri, not that far from when they filmed Ozark, if it gives you any idea. And definitely a lot more gravel roads than paved roads where he's at. And I don't remember how many flat tires he got this summer, but he really did have the right attitude about problem solve, that to the point that he played a game about it, the NASCAR game, see how fast he could change the flat tire and get back at work, and like would literally time it. Like, oh, I gotta break my personal record. And he got a flat tire, and he's like, oh crap, threw his shirt off, threw the thing, did it, and broke his record. He goes to grab his shirt, and he notices the boxes of books. There's like something moving on there. And he looks down, and he realizes he's covered in ticks. Not a couple, but he's covered in ticks.
Oh my God.
He's like, oh shit.
Oh no. Oh shit, it's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Drives himself to the nearest little 800-person town or whatever the hell you would have seen in Southwestern Missouri at the time. Like, strips down to the boxers, runs to this convenience store. He's like, what he's doing? He looks at him, he's like, what are you doing? He's like, I got texts. And the lady kind of helps him get cleaned off, whatever. And he ends up going out and still having a 100-unit day. And why am I telling that story, even though I just stole it from Dustin? It is a good story and he can tell it again. Here's why I'm telling that story as his sales manager. I never heard that story until the following spring. We're sitting there with a couple of the field managers on campus at UT, just the kind of stuff you do in between follow-ups, whatever. And somebody says something about the tick story, and they're like, I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, you never heard the tick story? And here's the beauty of it. The fact that he solved that, went on his way, and like never called me, never asked for help. I was on a pretty direct relationship with this time and still went on his way. You want to know why he sold as much as he did? That's a pretty good indicator.
Wow. That is a lesson and a half right there. That's mic drop right there. Yeah. Wow.
Anyway.
Wow. There you go. That's the key. That's the key, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Andres, Nick, the Ponytails team, Amy, for what you guys are doing. I think it's pretty cool. Good to have a chance to relive some old memories.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a blast and a really cool way of picking the brain of someone who just kind of was so successful and just did so much great. It had so much influence onto so many kids that are still having so much influence. So thank you for your legacy and for everything that you shared. And man, I had a blast. I hope it was fun and had some laughs there. And so look forward to keep staying in touch with you. And please be a fan. Follow us and listen into some of the people that we have coming up, because I think you'll like some of the guests that we have coming. So thank you so much, Roger. Awesome. Well, guys, my name is Andres Gamboa. We'll wrap this one up here, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, keep an eye out for Dustin's episode. We have some other people on the pipeline. Marcel Mayer, we're still trying to nail down a date for him, and some other awesome folks down the line. Thank you so much. If you like what you heard, if this was your first episode, make sure you guys subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We're all over the place. So see you guys there. Thank you so much. Have a good one, everybody.